Good morning. All eyes are now on the all-party meeting that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called tomorrow on the Chinese aggression in the Galwan Valley. And while it is true that Prime Minister Modi has said that India will give a befitting reply if provoked, it needs to be kept in mind that India is not dealing with a Pakistan kind of failed state, a state which has a very weak economy and therefore does not have the ability to really sustain any anti-Indian activity for very long. China will hit back. It has the capacity to hit back. China is a very important country when it comes to supplies of various commodities to India. So we need to look at this a little bit carefully. In fact, to the extent a country like Pakistan can even sustain any anti-India activity, that's really because of the support that countries like China give to it. Because Pakistan essentially then becomes the proxy in China's war to hit India. Indeed, as he's been arguing for a very long time, it will be important, while a lot of warmongering is going on, it will be important for the Prime Minister to impress upon the opposition, in fact on the people of India, that what is central to India's ability to inflict damage on China or to contain China is essentially India's GDP. Yes, GDP. It's not the military strength, it's India's GDP that matters. Military expenditure, by the way, is one of the few areas where India actually tops China consistently. We spend 2.4 or 2.5% of our GDP right now on military expenditure every year, and China spends a lower 1.8 or 1.9%. That's as a percentage of GDP. But because China's GDP is so large, it's about more than 5 times that of India. As a result of that, though China spends less proportion of its GDP on military expenditure, its overall military expenditure is about 3.8 or 3.9 times India. So China, on last count, spends about $250 to $260 billion a year on defense. We spend about $65 to $70 billion. So when you convert that into the number of planes, the submarines, the drones, the tanks, whatever, that's a big advantage that China has over India. Indeed, the immediate Chinese demand is for India to stop construction of its roads in the area. Basically, they are all-weather, good quality roads that allow India to, if need be, rapidly deploy troops, such artillery. In fact, we even have a high-altitude airstrip out there. So India has a tremendous ability right now to deliver ammunition and people and things like that. So China wants India to stop that. So that actually has to be a matter of pride for India, because in the past, whenever you talked about all-weather roads on the border in treacherous terrain like you have in Ladakh, it was really China that did that. It was never India which was developing those roads there. But the important thing here, and I can't stress this enough, the important thing here is that what has made it possible for India to build these roads? What has made it possible? There are 3 things: GDP, GDP, and GDP. Basically, as India got richer, as it got more skilled, as it had the capacity to order better equipment, that's how it got the capacity to build the roads. It got more management skills. So all of these are related to GDP. So while there's a lot of talk of stopping, imports from China, of preventing Chinese companies from doing business in India, today's newspapers have government sources saying that as far as BSNL is concerned, they've been told, to keep Chinese companies out in their latest tenders. So a lot of those issues are being, brought up again. In fact, the Swadeshi Jagran Manch had its eyes trained on, on the Delhi-Meerut corridor, one part of the Delhi-Meerut corridor, which has been given to a Chinese company, and they want that contract to be cancelled there. So we have a story there in the Financial Express. As it happens, the Ministry of Housing, which is in charge of and Urban Development, Urban Affairs, which is in charge of that project, has said that the contract cannot be cancelled. But why cannot it be cancelled? It cannot be cancelled because the project is essentially funded by the ADB. So what the government seems to be saying is that had the project been a fully government-funded project, we might have cancelled the contract. Now, given the fact that China itself doesn't play by the rules, so we saw in the Galwan Valley, for example, that while a de-escalation had been ordered and the Indian side kept to it, the Chinese actually increased their forces during that period. So, if the Chinese can't be trusted, there's no harm in India, playing hardball once in a while, basically keeping the Chinese off balance here. So telling BSNL that you cannot, allow a Chinese contractor to come in, at the same time allowing Huawei to do the 5G trials. some of these things, just keeping your enemy off balance is not a bad thing. So even if a contract or two of a Chinese company is cancelled, it may not be the end of the earth. It may not be the end of the world. So it's certainly not going by the rules of fair play that India does all the time, that India abides by. But since the Chinese don't abide by that, I don't think we need to necessarily stick to the rules there. But it's important to keep in mind that any attempt to impose higher import duties on China or stop Chinese companies from working in India, it's going to have very limited impact on China. So if you look at the total India's imports from China or Chinese exports to India, they're a very small proportion of overall Chinese exports to the entire world. If you look at the Chinese investments in India, they're a very small proportion of Chinese investments in the rest of the world. And also keep in mind, apart from the fact that it will not hurt China much, it will hurt India a lot. About 45% of India's electrical machinery imports, for example, come from China. About 75% of antibiotics that we import come from China. In fact, our pharmaceutical exports will take a big hit if we stop importing the API from China. So, in fact, we have a story which talks about how taming the dragon is not going to be that easy. But even if for example we do put those import duties, India will be hard pressed to find suppliers who can supply stuff to you at that kind of price point. So if India is not going to get that kind of price point, essentially we are talking about inflation levels or costs going up for Indian users. If we are willing to pay the price, then that's fine. But we need to know that there is a price. This is not a costless exercise. About 50 to 60% of what India imports from China are essentially intermediates, which means that these are goods that India processes and either it sells them in the local market or the export market. Now, if you are going to stop that Chinese business, a large part of the MSMEs which depend on this will also be hit. So, I think it's important I think it's probably more important that in tomorrow's meeting with the opposition and in our meetings with the Chinese, we try and limit the damage of Galwan. We try and make sure that it doesn't escalate into something bigger. And then we buckle down over the next few years, maybe even the next few decades. We basically try and fix the economy. I don't think you could run a marathon if you haven't been eating well for a long time and if you haven't been training it. So that's the lesson. We need to understand that all this warmongering, all this fake patriotism is fine, but you need to do the hard stuff in order to be able to contain China. The next story on our Corona package is that while the country holds its breath to see what's happening in Galwan, those people in Mumbai are gasping for breath. So we have data from the authorities there which points out that there's just one ICU bed and 11 ventilators left in Mumbai hospitals to fight the Corona fight. So it makes you wonder, that's a huge problem. So there's a big infrastructure challenge that we have. And it makes you wonder what happened to all those ventilators that, Indian automobile firms were supposed to be making. There was a lot of talk of great innovation that India had done in the space of ventilators. In fact, Financial Express has a story on one of those ventilator innovations. So if these great innovations were being made, where are those ventilators? We need to find out. And more important, instead of actually pointing the blame or pinning the blame on various people, we need to make sure that India's hospitals in places like Delhi, Mumbai for example is in bad shape, but even Delhi will be reaching that soon. So we need to make sure that the ventilators reach the places where they have to. And what is even more worrying, if building critical infrastructure is a big challenge in cities like Bombay and Delhi, and we've seen how badly we're slipping out there, our mindless policies continue. They just continue to make things worse. And it doesn't make any sense. So just to give you an example of this, the good news is that while Delhi was testing too little, after Home Minister Amit Shah came into the picture, he promised to ramp up the testing in Delhi, and there seems to be some level of progress there. The ICMR has just cleared a revolutionary testing kit which will make the test results available within half an hour or so. It probably costs a lot less than what the traditional RT-PCR test costs. So this rapid antigen test which ICMR has just cleared is very, very good news for India. So what's happened is, and this is the story that we have today in Financial Express, the government has decided that the rapid antigen testing will be used to ramp up testing in the capital. Now that's great news. But once again, as in the case of the RT-PCR, ICMR has put all manner of restrictions. So this rapid antigen test is going to be used only for in hotspots and there are various conditions as well. So why on earth when India needs to test more, when 70-80% of the people who have COVID don't have the symptoms, why can't we do tests for all? Why can't we just liberalize the rules and allow anyone who wants a test to go and walk in and get that test done? For some reason, this is just not happening. In fact, the makers of test kits are so frustrated that they set up this facility. They're making a lot more test kits, and there's very little testing happening in the country. So some of these manufacturers have actually gone to the government and said, please allow us to export these kits in. So we still have restriction on testing in India. We don't have enough testing, and the people who are making the kits now want to export. So if that isn't mindless policy, I don't know what is. An interesting story here is, as the Delhi government takes over the iconic Taj Mahal Hotel to make a sort of a center for the mildly ill corona patients, some people are asking the relevant question: why exactly are only private sector hotels being singled out? How come the Ashoka Hotel hasn't been taken over? How come Samrat hasn't been taken over? Why hasn't something like this being done in Vigyan Bhavan? Indeed, you get the feeling that there's some kind of perverse pleasure sometimes that the government is getting by taking over private facilities. There's this odd morality which seems to say that the private sector must do its bit, and the argument is that if you don't give up your hotel space, or even the hospital space in the case of private hospitals, if you don't give this up, you're not patriotic, and you have to do your patriotic duty. Of course, everybody has to do their patriotic duty. I don't think anybody's questioning that. The question is that why isn't the government doing its duty? After all, that's why we elected the government. That's why we pay our taxes. So if the government is falling short, why should the private sector be penalized for that? I think that's a serious question that needs to be answered. And equally problematic is the way arbitrary, fees are being levied. So, you put a cap on testing fees, you put a cap on what hotels can charge people who come and stay with them who've got corona. Now, how are these businesses to stay afloat? So essentially, you get the feeling that nobody in the government is actually applying his or her mind. At the end of the day, you need for these facilities to run, so people need to be paying for them. And secondly, as you said before, what are the Delhi government's plans? What are the Maharashtra government's plans to give you actual hospital beds which you need? There is stunning silence out there, deafening silence out there. Home Minister Prahlad Joshi has a very nice article in the Financial Express. It's our lead article. He makes an impassioned plea for the reforms that have taken place and that are taking place in the coal sector. He talks about how the privatization, how allowing the private sector in is very, very important. So more power to Mr. Joshi. The question that you've got to ask is, why did it take 6 years for us to do this? And when will the country's babus, will they find another way to implement, to slip in some fine print which will completely, ruin the scheme? They've done it in the past, and don't rule out that they'll try and do it again. But the important thing that comes to mind when you read Mr. Joshi's article is that India doesn't need one coal reform over 6 years, and then for the minister to be taking pride in it. So, certainly the minister needs to take pride. But India needs a reform like this every day. Every day for the last 6 years, every day for the next 6 years, perhaps the next few decades. Only then can in India hope to compete with China. These piecemeal reforms, after which we take great pleasure in tom-tomming them, is simply not going to work. A good story here is that after several years, Bajaj Auto has finally managed to beat Hero MotoCorp when it comes to revenue. Now, whether Hero will race ahead again is not clear, but for right now, I think the moral of the story is quite clear. You just can't beat a Bajaj. Have a great day. Thank you.